Everything good on your end, Audrey? Since you got the audio going and looks like you're able to share the screen. Oops.
Okay, I'm back.
Yes, everything seems to be going well. I just couldn't switch to the stop. Once the broadcast started, I couldn't switch my microphone on and off.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And you guys, the slides are moving forward?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they're advancing, yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. So I guess I can get started. It looks like it started.
I started the recording.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready, but I don't, let's see.
The only thing I see is stop broadcast. So
yeah.
I don't know if I'm live already.
I think
I'm live.
You're live? Let's see who's attending here.
If we have any folks.
Maybe I'll give it another minute.
Okay.
I'll be right back. Oh,
okay. Lisa Gover just said I'm live.
Okay.
Yes, That's what I thought. Okay, I'll get started.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Duane James. I'm the Division Director of the Laboratory Services and Applied Science Division. And I'm coming to you acknowledging where I live out here. I'm in the land of the Miwok. I just want to celebrate the history that they've provided to us here in this area. So this afternoon, we wanted to just give you an overview of some of the priorities that we have to support tribes this year and how we can provide that support to you going forward. Next slide, please. So just to kind of walk you through or just kind of give you an outline of the presentation, I'm going to just give an update on the lab relocation effort and then talk through some of the tribal priorities for this year, 2020. Oh, that should be FY 2022, sorry. And then Audrey Sensney is going to take the last topic about the testing of drinking water systems for PFAS. So just to give you a heads up on that. Next slide, please. So the lab relocation, I think a number of you know that our laboratory facility in Richmond, California is being consolidated with an ORD facility in Corvallis. That's on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see that's the EPA Richmond lab here in the San Francisco Bay Area. And all the way up to the right, that's the ORD facility on the campus of Oregon State University. Next slide. So just to kind of give you a timeline of where things are in this relocation, we last accepted samples at Richmond on September 30th. This is the month that we're continuing to process the in-house samples. And once those are done, we will shut down the equipment, box it up, and then ship it to Oregon. That's expected to happen in November. And then once we get the equipment up to Oregon, we're going to be doing a lot of things to set it up. There are lots of things that have to be done before we can actually start accepting samples again. Basically, we have to recertify all of the analysts who are going to be running the samples there, and just also getting the equipment primed for running samples. So we don't anticipate being able to do any more samples in an EPA facility up until March of next year. But in the meantime, the one thing that we wanted to do is to make sure that there wasn't a break in service and support to the tribes and to other clients that we have. So we're going to be subcontracting a lot of the analysis that is slated to occur in Oregon. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about what's going on. Even though we are moving some operations to Oregon, some services, are going to remain here in the Bay Area. So in the old facility, we're going to continue running a number of activities there, like microsystem. We do a lot of microsystem support for tribes, especially up on the Klamath River. And then when we get another local facility built out, which is slated to be around the July timeframe of next year, these local services will move over to the FSSC. And then once that's done, we have to do what is called an environmental due diligence process to make sure there's no contamination. It's a laboratory before we can turn the facility back over to the landlord, which is anticipated to be sometime in 2023. Next slide, please. So just some of the other services that we provide in addition to just lab analytical, and also how they provide support to the tribal activities. Those items highlighted in blue are the ones that we do a lot more to support tribes, like drinking water laboratory certifications. This year we are planning, that's going to remain here in the Bay Area. There won't be an interruption in that type of service. We are planning to do 2 lab audits this year. And then technical assistance on field and laboratory issues. Things come up all the time. All of our clients and others consult with us regarding things that they want to do or things that are ongoing right now and how we can provide that support to them. So we're going to continue doing that support here locally. And then the air monitoring QA audit functions. A number of tribes have the ozone monitors. The support that we provide, the calibrations, the quality audits of those monitors, that's going to remain here in the Bay Area. So, and there wouldn't be an interruption in that service while we transition certain operations to Corvallis. So once the Field Services Support Center is operational in Hayward, all of those services that you see on this slide here are going to move over to Hayward, and that's where it will become its permanent home. Next slide, please. So just to kind of provide a few highlights of the things that we want to do this year. Quality assurance is always a big item for us, especially in the area of grants. Making sure that grantees have great quality assurance services and systems in place, because as we all know, QA is used to provide, ensure that good data is used to support decision making. There are a number of efforts going on to expedite QAP approvals. Over the past year, we've actually been able to expedite a number of tribal QAPs and also work on the backlog. So that's an effort that Audrey has been leading, and she can speak more to it at the session tomorrow. There's also the effort on the way to review and provide feedback on the agency's quality management plan and QAP standards. And I know Audrey plans to reach out to all of you in terms of getting your input for that those activities. So, and this is just a plug for Audrey's session tomorrow at 3 p.m. So if you don't already have a session bookmark at that time slot, please check it out. Next slide, please. Okay, research is another area that we want to continue providing support to the tribes on. Many of you might be familiar of what we used to call the RARE, Research Applied, Regional Applied Research Endeavor, and then RESIS, which was the Regional Environmental Scientific, I can't even remember the acronyms now, I'm sorry. So used to using acronyms in EPA. And then the RSTIP, Regional State Tribal Innovations Programs. This used to be the different vehicles where EPA would provide funding to the regions that could also partner up with state and tribal entities to come up with applied research projects to address environmental issues. This year, ORD reviewed the process and has actually consolidated all of the 3 programs into one solicitation, but they still retain their individual character. So the RARE, what was formerly RARE, would still continue being the regions get to make decisions regarding what projects they want to fund. And then the RESIS and RSTIP, which has always been approved by headquarters, that approval will also retain that character. But instead of doing 3 solicitations over the year, the course of the year, it's just going to be 1 solicitation. So that's expected to be released next week. And then proposals are due in early December. So now funding can be given directly to tribes, but tribes can actually partner up with their media program colleagues to propose projects or issues that you may have already been working with your counterparts on. If anyone has a great research, an applied research project that you would benefit from that funding, please reach out to your colleagues and propose, submit proposals working jointly with them that could actually address those concerns. And then Matt Small, who is our regional science liaison, he actually is the point of contact for this program in the region. He's going to be talking more about this on Thursday at 9 a.m. So just a plug for Matt's session then. Next slide, please. So, and these are just examples of the collaborative EPA Tribal projects we've had over the years. With the Hooper, we're looking at air cleaners during wildfires and the impacts on health and indoor air. We've also done floating vegetation islands and developing indicators of ecosystems function with CRIT. We also, with the Navajo, measuring air quality and health impacts from stone replacements and also from stone coal used for home heating and cooking in Navajo homes. One of the things we came up with was like a replacement for some of those coal stoves, also recognizing the history and the culture of that some stoves may have been in a family for generations, and the cultural significance of that. So how do we address preserving that culture, but at the same time making sure that we are able to provide residents with alternatives that are much better for the indoor air quality. Next slide, please. And then harmful algal blooms will continue to be another priority for us. As I mentioned, the microsystem testing that we've been doing probably for the last 15 years now. We started with the tribes on the Klamath River, and it has expanded. This is actually one of our biggest areas that we provide support to, and which we will continue to do. As I mentioned, this functionality, this testing will not be moving to Corvallis. It will remain here in the Bay Area. So just want to reassure you that we will be available to provide that support. One of the things that we're very happy to report on is we were able to purchase an LC-MS instrument, which will allow us to identify a whole host of additional strains of microsystem. That way, we can get a better handle, and tribes and others can get a better sense as to what types of microsystem might be in their waters. And that would help inform certain decisions as well. So we plan to roll out that technology next year, and it will be an additional service that we will be providing to the tribes. Okay, can I have the next slide, please? And then on drinking water, again, that's such a major priority, not just for us, but I think across the agency. And I know many tribes have that concern as well. Here, what we plan to do, as I mentioned, is conduct the on-site audits of tribal laboratories, making sure that the measurements that they're taking meet the EPA requirements. And then the big initiative we have this year, we're going to be providing support to the drinking water program and their efforts to conduct PFAS sampling at drinking water systems. And that's going to be starting, I believe, sometime next month. And I know Water Division is having a session tomorrow on the 21st, on Thursday at 2 p.m. So we're just going to provide a little overview of what we as LSAs, what we are doing to provide support to that initiative. But I also encourage you to check out that session on Thursday as well. Okay. And next slide. I think it's now. I'll turn it over to Audrey to provide a little bit more of an overview of the support that we are doing for this particular initiative. Audrey, it's all yours.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. So welcome, everybody. Duane and I thought it would be great for you guys to see some of the things that we do internally to support the media programs. And considering that PFAS is an emerging contaminant, that we have national goals around under the new administration, we thought that this would be the perfect project to highlight for yourselves. So hopefully you enjoy this. So many of you may have seen Andy. He was a longtime staff member in our lab, and I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with the face he's making as you kind of are first introduced to our quality assurance project plans and the agency's requirements. One thing that you may not know is that my office, the QA branch within LSASD, not only reviews your quality assurance project plans, but we also have to review our own quality assurance plans that are developed by our own colleagues in the media programs. So we need to comply with our QA requirements, us as an agency, and they need to be developed for review and approval prior to taking any kind of environmental measurements. We're all under the same umbrella as you guys are. We are often contacted to give technical support to our EPA colleagues in order to help them develop, through their project goals, help them develop their QAPs and SAPs and field sampling plans. And so for an office that, is relatively small, we provide a huge support role within the region. Recently, actually, this started just about, summer of last year, I believe. The tribal drinking water team decided that they were going to have a project. They had the funding and the ability to go out and help some of the public, their direct implementation tribal public water systems, that they wanted to be able to monitor those particular systems for PFAS. They actually received some additional help within their team from Ian Chen, who was a Pathways intern, and it was his goal to develop a QAP, and he worked closely with a member of my office, Joe Eidelberg, to actually develop the QAP and determine how the project would achieve its goals, how the sampling design would be set up, how they would, figure out results, and who would be doing the work. So all of those major components of a QAP that you guys have to deal with every single time you have a grant or a monitoring goal that you want to achieve using EPA's funds. So just really quickly, I'm sure many of you are familiar with PFAS, but PFAS is a group of substances of synthetic chemicals that have been used in a variety of consumer industrial products since the 40s. The known sources of PFAS in air, water, and soil are the aqueous film-forming foam, and you can see a picture down in the lower right-hand corner. It's essentially a fire retardant. We find sources, from facilities that were actually producing or using PFAS within their facilities, and then also in landfills as, we continue to build up trash of those consumer products and, it leaches down into the groundwater. They are mobile, persistent in the environment. They're bioaccumulative and associated with adverse health effects in humans, which is why we have a national guidance and goals within the agency that we're trying to achieve over the course of the next 4 years within the agency. So we have to get into the QAP components. So how did they figure out what they were going to be doing? So the overall goal was to provide an opportunity for all Region 9 tribal PWSs to sample for PFAS in drinking water, to learn more about their water quality and increase consumer confidence. One thing that I wanted to show you about how they kind of visualized how they would be working with their partners is they actually set up this really great flow chart that kind of identified, who was involved and what roles they were going to be using throughout the sampling effort. As Duane mentioned, if you want to learn more about this particular project, Water Division will be giving a presentation on this particular project later on in the week. I highly suggest that you attend it because you're only going to get bits and pieces here. But they did, make it very clear that this particular project was voluntary and non-regulatory, and that the water operators at that certain site would be receiving sample bottles, shipping material. They'd actually be the ones who are collecting the samples, and they would ship back to a lab that was designated or identified by EPA for analysis. Okay, another thing you need to think about when you're looking at your environmental, what kind of measurements you're going to be taking for environmental information is, what are you going to look for in a lab? So regarding the Corvallis move, we couldn't, Region 9 lab was not immediately available. And so we're actually going to be subcontracting 2 labs to perform the work. The subcontracted lab will actually ship to each of the water systems, the sample bottles, the bottles for the field reagent blanks, a cooler, and a chain of custody form. So these were things that, they kind of had to think about, well, if the lab that we were currently using and we were thinking we were going to use is now subcontracted, who's going to be sampling what? Who's going to, from the lab, who's going to be providing the sampling equipment, and then what makes the most sense for making sure that those samples get back in a timely way so that the analyses can be run. Other parts of the QAP components include planning and sample design. So first of all, planning before you go out to your field location, reviewing the sampling locations. Are there any safety issues? Is there any personal protective equipment that needs to be, worn or the site operators need to be aware of? And it was determined that their contractor RCAC would be, or their partner RCAC would actually visit the site to confirm access to the sampling locations prior to sampling. Again, one thing that you have to think about when you're developing your QAP and you're going through your project, this is the plan, do, act, check method, is, what does your sampling design look like? And I have to say, I really like the way that they thought about this and developed a simple flow chart to be able to kind of identify what they needed more details around. I think this is a great representation of how to start kind of planning your project and then adding more details as required by the QAP criteria. We talked about field equipment, and this was, again, one of the things that they had to really think about: what made the most sense to send, what was, required by the method that was being the PFAS was being analyzed by. And so they identified, the propylene, polypropylene sample bottles, the field reagent blanks. They did, within the QAP, identify that the operator would need to procure wet ice for storing the samples inside the cooler. That obviously couldn't be shipped. And that the samples had to be on ice and arrive within 48 hours of collection of that sample. It was also determined that UPS shipping label would be provided by EPA. So again, this is a voluntary program, and the agency, would be helping with those shipping costs. So, I just touched on a few components, but one of the most important components after figuring out the who, what, when, where, is figuring out how you're going to make decisions based upon the data that's collected. So this was something that they had to think about, what happens with the results and how are they going to, move decisions along and provide, suggestions to the PWSs. So EPA is going to work with the utility to develop and recommend, as appropriate, depending on the data that's collected, consumer notification and possible mitigation measures. Sample results will be stored in an EPA database, so it will be available most likely to the public at some time. I don't know if that's really the case right now, but it will be within EPA's systems. And the goal is to provide the water system with useful data about PFAS vulnerabilities to make informed decisions about their drinking water. As you can see here, it was, like I said, I believe this started back in, I would say, August of 2020, 2020. And we just approved the quality assurance plan just this past month, September 9th, 2021. But it met all the criteria that we needed to see within the program. It followed our guidance, and it looked like a sound plan to move forward. And so I believe they're going to start sampling in November. So one step that's often missed is once you get your QAP approved, you have to train the sampler. You have to show them that there is a QAP available. You have to show them that there are specifications that they need to follow in order to make sure that you have high quality data, that you are collecting it in a consistent manner, and that the analyses and the holding times and everything is being shipped in a way that has been specified by the QAP. I feel like sometimes many of you wear many hats, and it's most of you who are writing the QAP, and then you're also monitoring. So maybe you know that QAP like the back of your hand. But as you do succession planning, or as you have the ability when you do to hire new staff, it's always great to get, your new staff introduced to the QAP for a particular project. And so the tribal drinking water team did exactly that. Together, Joe Eidelberg from the QA branch and Ian Chin from the drinking water team actually held a training on August 30th to ensure that all the samplers and their contractors knew what the specifications were within the QAP, and they were familiar with the things that they were required to do in order to make sure that they collected good quality data. So from here on out, like I said, the field sampling is scheduled to begin November 2021. We mentioned that the Richmond laboratory is actually in the process of being relocated. So unfortunately, they aren't going to be able to accept these samples until March of next year. So knowing that we were going to be relocating, EPA decided to subcontract out all of the analytical work to make sure that the project was timely and could continue to move forward. And it was identified that the EPA lab staff will actually supervise the subcontract and make sure that everything moves forward in the way that we identified in the QAP. So just like you guys look for certified labs and trying to figure out what's the appropriate lab to pick, we identified a number of criteria and we being the Region 9 lab, for selection of that subcontracted lab. So in the beginning, as we were looking for labs to subcontract with, we sent out a solicitation to 40 NELAC certified labs. 10 of those labs actually submitted information in the timely way. And after looking at their certifications and everything and the criteria for selection, it was identified that 2 labs were selected to move forward with this particular project. So the criteria that was used was, confirmation of the 25 analytes that are included within the PFAS, because it is a number of analytes in there. Let's see, they had to have the reporting limits that met the requirements. They had to have NELAP accreditation or ISO accreditation. They had to be able to have adequate data package description or examples to share with us so that we could see them. And they also had to provide a QC reporting compliance. Both labs that were selected are certified labs. Both labs are participants in the EPA method 533 validation study, and both labs were challenged with proficiency testing or samples to demonstrate performance. And we do that sometimes to ensure that the analyses that we do that within our QAPs a lot of times to ensure that that the data that we're getting back falls within the ranges that are expected. And I don't know if anybody, I think Bob is available hopefully on here if anybody has questions about that. And that's the end of my portion of the presentation. Does anybody have any questions for Duane, myself, or anybody else from the lab that's on?
Yeah, if anyone has questions, maybe you can leave them in the chat, and we'll try and answer them.
I can see the attendee list. I know there's not some, I know you guys aren't shy. Duane, do you have anything to add?
Let's see, just give it while I'm talking a little bit, maybe someone may have a question. And again, just type it in the chat. But okay. Bob is who just typed in the chat. He's the one of the analysts out at the lab. So thanks, Bob, for the feedback. Yeah, you know, with LSA as a support division, many times the work that we do is with the, let me go back on video, is with the media programs, and they in turn work with you. But you know, at all times for the process, don't ever hesitate to reach out to any one of us. I know many of you know Audrey, especially from her previous work in water division as a project officer. But just reaching out to any one of us, Audrey or Peter Husby, myself, you know, we're always looking for opportunities to provide support to tribes. So, you know, if there's a training on a particular issue that you think you might want to get more information about, that might be good for your particular tribe, or maybe a group of you might identify a common training that would be helpful. I know Audrey has done a lot of that with regard to QA over the years, the last few years, but I just also want to reach out and just say that in terms of from the laboratory side or the technical side, if there's some sort of support you think would go a long way in assisting you as you deal with the environmental issues that you face, don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us in the division. So, so that's all we wanted to present to you today, just to kind of what are our priorities for FY 2022, and just to let you know that we are available whenever you want us to provide assistance. I don't have anything else to add, but Audrey, anything else you might want to share?
No, nothing else. I look forward to seeing more of you guys in future sessions. I think that, you know, the regional science liaison will be really interesting. I definitely encourage you all to attend my training session tomorrow, because we'll be talking about the new QA standards. And I look forward to it. I'm sorry we can't all be in person together, but at least I get to see your names, at least in the attendee list. So anyways, I look forward to continuing on and meeting up with you guys in these rooms over the course of the week.
Yes.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you, Audrey and Duane. If that's it, we'll stop the broadcast and everyone can go on to the next session.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.